Well, hello, Alan.
So nice to see you, my friend.
Likewise.
Michael and I definitely bonded over our love of soaps.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell everybody the origins and the influences to White Girl in Danger?
Yeah, so I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, where when I was like a very little kid, my mother and father both worked, and so my mom would drop me off at my great aunt Ruth's house before I was old enough to go to school, and we would watch soap operas like every day. Like my day was as follows: 10:30 a.m. was Sale of the Century, 11:30 a.m. was Classic Concentration, 12:30 p.m. was Young and the Restless, 1 p.m. was Days of Our Lives, 2 o'clock was Another World, and 3 o'clock was Santa Barbara. And I, as a little kid, there was nothing else to do. And so and we had one of those, do you remember those giant, big TV screens that were like made out of wood? Like my great aunt Ruth had one of those, and I would just watch these stories, as she called them, unfold every day, and I became kind of obsessed with them. And then when I was old enough to go to school, I would then watch on half days and during the summer, and then I would come home and I would call Aunt Ruth on the phone and it would be like, wait, Ronan is John Black now? Like, what's going on? And like, it was this incredible intergenerational relationship that I had with my great Aunt Ruth, where she would fill me in on what was happening. And then as I got older, back in those days, we still had VHS, and I would record Guiding Light at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then Days of Our Lives at 1, Another World at 2, and then General Hospital at 3. And I just was like, I just became obsessed with them, and that's actually one of the reasons why I moved to New York and applied to the schools I went to, is I wanted to be a soap opera writer. That was like my original dream. And so many things happened. I fell into theater as like a total afterthought. But I love the genre of daytime, and soap opera and melodrama in general.
And you started at 5 years old, correct?
I did, like 5 years old, watching Days and Young and Restless and Another World with my great aunt Ruth.
Absolutely. Lileana, what drew you to this project?
It's crazy. I went to see, Michael and I met when he was in Williamstown working on a project, and I was like, who is this interesting writer who gets to stay in the fancy house at Williamstown? And then he went up on stage, and he got to, he went up on stage and then performed. And if you've ever seen Michael perform, it is a joyous, insane, wonderful experience. And I was like, who is this person? I need to know who it is. And then I saw a reading of White Girl in Danger at Joe's Pub. And it was so massive and so filled with so much drama and stories that I was like, I have to work with Michael on this, and then I did.
Yeah, Lileana shot her shot like no other. She literally came out to me at that concert and was like, I wanted to direct this musical. And at that point, I was like, nobody had ever pursued me. And I was like, so like a fair maiden, like in a tower. And I was like, oh, yes, of course.
Like which soap character?
Exactly. It was like I was Holly, Lindsay Reed, and Lileana was Roger Thorpe. Like coming to, well, that had a very dark arc to it. But it had that this torture, this love affair between the two of us.
You had an early Raja introduction to soaps as well, and you told me a little about what you loved about them. Will you share that with the audience?
Sure. Well, my mother watched soap operas, and I would watch her watch them, and really enjoyed them. And I think as I got older and I study pop culture, my work is about pop culture, I think I've been sort of reverse researching the genre of soap opera, specifically because of shows like Dynasty, which is a remake, or like Love Island, or How to Get Away with Murder. All of those shows are filled with so many tropes of the soap opera genre, and so when you start to want to figure out where did these tropes come from, it takes you back to General Hospital, Guiding Light, and then to think like, oh, I had a relationship to those as a child, watching my mother watch them and talking to my sisters as if I were in a soap opera, I think, all of the time.
I can understand that for sure. Talk about the story, what you just sang, The Town of All Whites. Tell everybody
Yeah, so White Girl in Danger is an idea that sort of came to me as like as a joke initially. I was in grad school, and because I'd grown up, loving, my daytime, but also my nighttime, because like there was like, Days of Our Lives, Another World, and all of that, but there was also like 90210 and Melrose Place and all of that. And because Monday nights, because literally I started watching 90210, and when Shannon Doherty left 90210, I stopped watching. Because I was like, if there's no Brenda Walsh, then it's not 90210. But Heather Locklear was coming to Melrose Place, and I was like, Heather Locklear is that bitch. And so I started watching Melrose Place. And so it was all of that, but also like these Lifetime movies, or back in those days, what used to be called like Monday night movies, or Sunday night movies. And like they would come on, like there was this one that I loved with Shannon Doherty, of course, because I was obsessed with her, called Friends to the End, where it was basically single white female, but on a college campus. And then like Judith Light was in one called Betrayal of Trust with Judd Hirsch, where she played a jazz singer who like couldn't sing anymore, and so she had to go to therapy to figure out why she couldn't sing anymore. And then Judd Hirsch gave her phenobarbital to put her in a trance, and he would like hypnotize her, but he was of course sexually assaulting her. And then she like, no one would believe her that it was happening, and then she found out. Then she like went to all these authorities to figure it out, and then she went to another therapist who helped her figure out that she had been assaulted as a child, which is why she couldn't sing anymore. And she like, there's this beautiful sequence where Judith Light sings Stormy Weather. Like, it's just, anyway, all these movies had these like crazy excesses that as a kid, I just like imprinted upon, because I was like, I'm that jazz singer. I can't sing Stormy Weather either. But anyway, so I had this weird idea, like when I was in grad school, like, I'm gonna make a spoof of like these Lifetime movies that's gonna be, because the thing I noticed is that the common thread was that it was always like a white girl or woman who was in some sort of peril, either of her own making or because of somebody else. And so I like came up with this funny little tune that I said, white girl in danger, she's doing drugs, but she won't do her homework. And it was just, and that's just all it was. That's like all it was for like a long time. But then, I'm like such an idiot. But then like somewhere like around 2015, I noticed that there was all of these like conversations that started sort of bubbling up in the culture about diversity, equity, inclusion, representation, etc. And as a Black writer, I started to think about how I intersected with these ideas as I was hearing them, and suddenly these two little molecules began to float together of like, white girl in danger, she's doing drugs, but she won't do her homework, and like, representation, why can't there be a Black Murder, She Wrote, or whatever. And suddenly the idea for White Girl in Danger was born, which is that it's set in a soap opera town called All White, as the opening number alludes to. And in the town of All White, there's two races and classes of people. There's the All Whites, who are these characters who have these crazy storylines as far as the eye can see. And then this other race and class of people called the Black Round. And the Black Round circled back and forth between the same story of slavery and police violence over and over and over again. Until one day, one of the Black Round, this girl named Keisha, is like bemoaning like her sort of tortured existence, and she's just complaining about how she doesn't want to be in these narratives. And that's the day when the all-right writer, who is kind of an Oz-like figure, sort of announces to the universe that Molly Goodwhite has been killed by the all-white killer, and now the role of best friend will be filled by Keisha Gibbs, the Black Round. And so she moves into that role in All White, and she becomes a best friend to Megan, Megan, and Megan, who have like the trope all-white girl problems. One's got an abusive boyfriend, one's got an eating disorder, one's got a globe-trotting mom who ignores her. But then once she's there, she's like, it's not enough. She wants more, so she starts to scheme and plot and manipulate to steal their little storylines away, and that's the point when the all-white writer sends the all-white killer after her, because the all-white killer is picking off the girls with the juiciest stories. But then the all-white killer's identity is like a big shocker that turns the whole story on its head. And so
A
that's
Friday cliffhanger.
It's like Friday's cliffhangers, Saturday cliffhangers, Sunday cliffhangers, like cliffhangers. It's pretty wild.
Absolutely.
And it's a musical.
You know, speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, growing up watching soap, was that ever something you actually thought about while you were watching?
So the interesting thing about that is, like, as a little kid, and particularly back in that time period, like this is like, you know, mid to late 80s, early 90s and stuff, there was no language about any of that. And yet I was definitely very clear on who I was and wasn't seen in media or whatever entertainment I was watching. But at the same time, and this is like a very key point, I also was like deeply into what I was watching. So there's this sort of dichotomy between that of like, I would see, you know, Felicia Gallant on Another World, or like Erica Kane on All My Children, or Marty Saybrook on One Night to Live, or Rita Shane on Guiding Light, or Lucinda Walsh on As the World Turns, or Carly Corinthos on General Hospital. I mean, I watched literally every one of these shows. And I was so into what they were laying down, but I also was like, I was definitely always on the lookout for like, where is that like black character who's moving the story the way that those characters are. And I wasn't watching Young and the Restless at the time, but the character who was really doing that was Drusilla Winters, who has like the most insane story arc of like all time for black characters.
Victoria Rowell,
who was like herself as an actor is such an icon, and I loved her. But like, so it was it was like sort of this real dichotomy between seeking the black characters, but also being obsessed with the white characters who were there. And that's sort of a little bit of the tension where White Girl in Danger lives.
That's great. Before we get back to the music, Lileana and I were talking backstage, and Raja a little. Michael, as you can all very well tell, is an encyclopedia of knowledge.
I subscribed to Soap Digest in high school. I know their spouses. I know their children. I know who they were dating before they met their spouses. I know these people like the back of my hand.
So I am curious from both of you, how did that encyclopedia help this process for putting this show together?
Well, I mean, as you can tell, Michael likes his stories, yes?
I love my stories.
So I feel like one of the things that's been exciting for us to kind of develop is like, how does a very distinct soap operatic universe translate into theatrical time, right? Because these seasons have lasted like, what, 40 years?
40, 50
years
yeah, like
of
General
stories.
Hospital just said 60 years.
Yeah,
You know?
Young and the Restless is 50 this month, and General Hospital turns 60 in April.
Which is insane. And so when you think about Michael's extensive knowledge about complete storylines, you know, from the beginning to the end, thinking about how that translates into theatrical time. And so you're thinking about how do you give the sensation of an audience binge watching an entire season of a soap opera? That kind of knowledge of story and plot and character and the twists and turns that they take, I think has managed to manifest inside the world of White Girl in Danger. Yeah?
Yeah, I would add that I think what's important and what we've been doing is to keep the story moving, right? Like you want to be able to watch multiple storylines at the same time and make that make sense. I think the thing that has been exciting for us is thinking about what people will attach to, right? Like thinking about 60 years of that information in the world. I think we can kind of tell quite quickly what people can hold on to and how to keep the tensions in the stories alive. And that's what I think we spend a lot of time doing, is like where do we want our attention to go? How do we keep that attention, and how do we like thread that to the next beat so that you don't get ahead of it, but you're like hanging on to it as it moves forward.
That's perfect. I can't tell the time. Are we?
No one's going anywhere. We have them hanging on.
No,
this
I
is
know
the
that.
moment. This is the moment. This is the moment. We have to keep it going. Keep it going. Next. And
Dun,
next.
dun,
and
dun.
next. And next. You almost dropped our thread, Alyse.
Stay tuned for scenes in the next White Girl in Danger.
Sounds like it's time for a song.
No.
Yes.
Before more, we go.
Here's the entrance to the top of Act 2 with Let's Party.
Yeah, and this song happens at the top of Act 2. Well, it's technically the middle of Act 1, but we're calling it Act 2. Keisha, our protagonist, our background protagonist, has gotten a little bit of a taste of her wish to enter sort of into these all-white narratives, and now she's going to a party at Scott Matthews' house.
Put your hands together.
Yeah. And Scott
Let's
Matthews kind of like
party.
a bad. And Scott Matthews like a bad boy.
Hey Megan, love your hair.
Hey Megan, really love your skirt.
You're looking pretty skinny there.
Wow, Megan, how did you get hurt?
Oh, me and Zach went to the mall. I tripped on a banana peel. I'm such a klutz, I swear that's all. It really isn't a big deal.
Let's party, let's jump up and down. Let's smoke till we choke. Let's drink till we drown. Let's give each other syphilis, but don't tell my mom. We'd be like, whoa, Well, Keisha, what happened to your hair?
Oh, nothing, just a new shampoo. Have you guys seen Scott anywhere? Oh, Megan, what happened to you?
Oh, me and Zach went for a run. I got stung by a bumblebee.
Just one more drink and then I'm done.
Just one more shot, then I'll be free. Let's party, let's roll on the floor. Let's say never again, and then let's do it some more. Let's swear a blood allegiance on some old Ouija board and be like, whoa,
Just have fun, just lean in. Don't worry about your melanin. Just let your story take control. Be a victim, be a villain. Whichever one works to help you win. Whichever is the starring role. Just party, just kick up your heels. Just give up to all whiteness to see how it feels. Just let the music cross you over where you belong. And be like, let's party, let's jump up and down. Let's smoke till we choke. Let's drink till we drown. Let's give each other syphilis, but don't tell my mom. We be like,
So a song, Let's Party, how long for you to write something like that? How many incarnations might there have been for this number?
So the weird thing about a lot of the songs in White Girl in Danger, and this is like if anybody saw A Strange Loop, like A Strange Loop, thank you. A Strange Loop was a show that began very much from a place, like from a place of just exploration and instinct and me sort of like just sort of plumbing the depths and just coming up with it slowly but surely. Whereas White Girl in Danger is a show that was more like I had this concept and I was like, the music, because I knew there was gonna be so much plot in the show, like an insane amount of plot, that the songs had to like get in, get out, and move on. And so like, all the songs for this show came relatively quickly because they had to be connected to like a hook that stated its case and helped you sort of move from one place to another very quickly. So like Let's Party was like a song that and also all of the songs in the show for the most part all had a sort of nostalgic reference point that I used as a jumping off place to kind of create these kind of pastiche moments that were also like at the same time digging into Keisha and the background characters and a sort of like psychology and sort of their id, as it were. And so it wasn't a song that took me very long at all because it was like, it just had to have a pop sensibility and it had to just tell the story of what they felt on a sort of visceral level. So it happened pretty fast.
Thanks. Lileana, talk about your process. You get the script. What's the first thing you do?
I first ask Michael, when they say we give each other syphilis but don't tell our moms, where does that come from?
So let's talk a moment about syphilis. So like a lot of the songs come from sort of like a weird sort of nostalgic psychology, which I won't give it away about what that's about. But there was one of the many Lifetime movies that I had absorbed was this one called She's Too Young, starring Marcia Gay Harden. It came out in 2004. And it's about this town where all these like teen girls are all like having sex with, you know what I'm talking about. Like all these teen girls are having sex with these boys because like we just want them to like us. And they all get syphilis. Like there's a syphilis outbreak in this town, and at school, weirdly, and I was fascinated by this in this particular movie because most of these movies like only have like basically white people with black sort of just one-liners, but in this particular movie, there was this black like I don't know, disease specialist who, like this black woman who was like, syphilis is breaking out in this town and I've got to help these kids. And she had this voice like this and she'd say things like teen sex. Like that's how she spoke. And she was there to like tell all the worried white parents about their kids getting syphilis. And like Marcia Gay Harden was like this mean mom who was like, she would like go into parties where all the kids are having sex and be like, where's my daughter? Where's my daughter? I don't want my daughter to get syphilis, you know? And I just was like, just the audacity of this storytelling to like just be so bonkers in that way. And it had this like major black woman character trying to stop these white children from getting syphilis. Just was too good not to like cherry pick from in some way. She's Too Young. I highly recommend it. It's on YouTube. She's Too Young. Marcia Gay Harden is so good.
Yeah, so like part of the process, I think, is literally digging through Michael's encyclopedia of all of these Easter eggs that are like embedded inside of the musical itself. And I think part of the joy that we have in like getting into that is one of the things that we think about is like how actors are going to embody this world, right? Like how do you live at that elevated level of performance? And you literally watch Michael and you're like, oh, right, yes, I know what world. I know where I am now. Nothing happens at like level 1. Nobody speaks at this calm, level of pace. Everything is so elevated and heightened. And then I think we think about like how does that manifest gesturally? Like how do they move across space? Like the scenic design, I'm working with Adam Rigg and Montana Levi Blanco, who are amazing set and costume designers. And I think in some ways they have to give us space that is both empty enough to inhabit the many different worlds and genres that we go across throughout the musical, but also heightened in Montana's costumes with color and vibrancy and the same kind of energy that Michael and his music brings into the world, which then of course translates also into movement.
Yeah, I'll say it's such a field day of genre clashing, which for me is very exciting to make a work that is a collage in many ways. So you have musical theater, which is the form that everyone thinks they're coming to see, and then you have like pop and what we have like 90s pop, and then we have the aughts pop, and then we have current pop, and then we have like melodrama, right? Like melodrama in movement and camp. And I think something that all of those things don't have by themselves, but what's being required in this musical is like sincerity in a weird way. So you have all of this like heightened sense of do more, do a lot, do more, but then like do it from your heart.
Mean it.
Like people have to believe it, or else you can't go on the ride. If it's too campy, then it feels like there's so much more commentary than specificity, and if it's too musical theater, then it just feels like candy. So if it doesn't have a tinge of like, you want this and you really want this, but also you don't know what's gonna happen next, so you have to want it in the moment that you're wanting it in, and you have to embody that, and then that's gonna change, and then we're doing a hip hop dance, and that's gonna change, and then we're doing 80s aerobics, and then that's gonna change, and I need a fucking step touch on the one, and do it with your heart.
And it's like, and that's soap opera, and that's like what drew me to it so much over all those years as a kid into my like early 30s was like, Kim Zimmer as Rita Shane jumping into a fountain and being like, "Is that what you want, Joshua? I baptized myself as the slut of Springfield!" And she and she fucking did it, and she meant it, and it was real, and that's why she won 5 Emmys. There's 5 Emmys. I mean, and so many moments, and I would memorize them. Like Sarah Brown as Carly Corinthos in General Hospital, saying to Amberton Bland, who's a friend in the Enrajas, she, remember coming down the Quartermain staircase, she goes, "You know what? You're gonna find out. Just like all the rest of us lowlives who operate so far beneath your little Quartermain radar that we don't even register. Happy landed, baby girl." And what does that mean? I don't know. But she just imbued it with such venom that me on the other side of the screen, I felt that all the way from California pretending to be Port Charles, New York, a fictional New York town. And that's what I wanted to achieve, and what I want to achieve in this show is just these people who are larger than life, but they fucking mean everything that they say. Even if it changes 2 seconds later.
You mentioned Easter eggs. I think Lileana said Easter eggs, or you said Easter eggs. You might not know the answer today, but we should before the show opens. Do you know how many Easter eggs you have?
Millions.
Also, there's Easter eggs that we each put in that we probably each don't know that we
That's
put
right.
in.
I guessed one of Raja's the other day. It was a Showgirls.
Yes, you did.
Well done. Raja, you told me that you took a study and movement melodrama class in college.
Yeah, I did.
And how did what you learned there, how do you bring that to White Girl in Danger?
Yeah, I was referencing a book that I had to read for a class, which was great. It was called Melodrama. It was by Jonathan Goldberg, who's a queer theorist, and he wrote that melodrama for queer people is the study of impossibility. And that made sense to me, and I think it makes sense to what we're talking about, which is that in any moment anything could happen, and that there's, I think, I don't know, if you're a queer person, I think you kind of feel that all the time. You're anything could happen. We need glitter. And actually, you're all in the musical right now. Glitter drop, and then you just make that happen, and you're actually, everyone's gonna die. And just this idea that anything could happen and that you have everything you need to make happen. And then it goes from that kind of stuff to thinking about small details of the shifts of head on music, and the twinkle in an eye, and the brushing of a leg while the eye shifts, and that happens musically, but it's also inspiring a kind of magic that when you're on the other side of it, it creates a container for you to believe it, right? If I can't play the piano, can you make, and unfortunately, we're not showing you any movement here, so you'll have to come to the show. Cliffhanger. But that idea of suspense and drama and impossibility being, to use Michael's words, imbued in every moment is something that I was really excited by learning, because when you learn it, you're of course, and then you can never see anything else the same. Ever. I can never watch TV the same. I watch TV and I can guess what's gonna happen because you're watching their behavior and they're she's gonna turn around and scream no. 3, 2, she's no! And you're fuck, the formula is precise and it's incredible.
That very funny you say that, because I think our love of soaps and watching soaps, now watching anything on TV, I'm always predicting what's coming next.
And also in real life, I was talking to one of our
And
actors.
also in real life.
I was talking to one of our actors, Alyse, about that, about how, especially in these last like 3 years, because this is also part of what White Girl in Danger is about how the ways in which the world has become a soap opera, in a certain sense, and like you, and I, in these moments that I've had in my life, where suddenly I'll realize I'm in a scene, and I have to, in those moments, decide, am I gonna yes and as like my character, or the character of my choosing, or am I gonna like withdraw, or become a side character, or whatever. And like and those moments are like both thrilling and terrifying, and that's one of the many sort of things inside the show that I'm sort of like investigating.
Love that. You and Raja collaborated on A Strange Loop. Talk about your relationship and what working together is like.
I mean, Raja is the breather of life into things. And he, like, because I'm not, like, so Raja's always asking me if I'll teach him to sing. Mama, I want to sing, I want to sing, I want to. And I'm always like, I can't really dance. But like somehow between the two of us, we're able to like really meet in the middle, and this new thing is born. And sort of, it's almost like we vogue together. And like we find the tension that makes the baby that needs to exist in the world. And so I'm like so grateful to him for his brilliance and genius.
I am, if you are the living Michael Jackson, I am
the
the
living
not
Michael
guilty
Jackson.
R. Kelly.
That's right. I'm the guilty living Michael Jackson, and he's the innocent R. Kelly. It's so dark,
It's so
but that's
dark.
also White Girl
What's
in
in the
Danger,
name?
so strap in.
But as you can see, like the rehearsal process is fun. Yes, it is crazy.
How are you feeling today? You know, the show goes into previews March 15th. How are the three of you feeling?
We're gonna go.
I mean, I just want to shout out these amazing actors and musicians. They are so incredible, and they are also just a wealth of knowledge and resource and stories and liveness. Like, they are in some ways so generous. And like, when you talk about living at that level for like the amount of time that this show lasts, that asks for an incredible generosity of spirit. And I think like we just did a run earlier today, so this is like hour 10 of our like 10-hour day, and they come in and they give so much life, and that I think is also a testament to the piece, right? It's like when you live at these soap operas, or when you're living at level 100, it's in some ways like a giving of life, right? To people who need it, who need to feel life on extreme terms in order to be reminded of what it is to live.
Because you only have one life to live. Bum, bum, bum.
And so, like, I just have to shout out their tremendous work in bringing that life into the
And
space.
also you. I think it's important to shout
Hello.
out Lileana,
Hello, somebody.
who really contains the show. I mean, as you can see, we need containing, but that requires vision, right? That requires vision. That requires containing. It requires so much, and I think that I feel ready for March 15th, and only because of what you've been able to do, to guide, to herd, and to inspire. These people feel if they're not able to do that, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel excited about, if they don't feel encouraged, and that I haven't seen that in a lot of rooms, and the way you do that has brought more than I think we could have imagined we could get to.
Amen, amen.
I love that, because Lileana, you and I were talking about professional influences, like teachers or professors. All three of you, a shout out to somebody who, had a huge impact on where you are right now.
I mean, well, one person is, when I was in college as an undergrad, I took a soap opera writing course. Like, it was only offered like one semester, and I jumped at it because that's what I wanted to do at that point. And this guy named Harding LeMay taught the class, and he was the head writer Another World for a brief time. And I think he did some work on As the World Turns. I don't know if he was a head writer, but he was like a consultant or something. And he was like, you know, an older gentleman at the time, and he's since passed away. But he was somebody who said something like very crucial to me that's followed me through the years, even beyond the idea of soap writing, even just playwriting in general. He said, in a scene, go deep instead of long. And that's something that's lived with me in everything that I've written, and I always try to remember that when I'm writing, you know, a piece, is that it's the depth of it that's more important than the length. And I consider that especially when I'm editing. When I'm like, you know, like there's this one monologue that happens at a certain point in the show that's like, it's been very long, and I've been like, and everyone's like, cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it. And I'm like, no, I can't cut it, but I need to go deeper into it. And then that will actually, in some ways, speak to it will help me find the right length if I find the meaning and the sense of it, of what is trying to be conveyed. And so Hardy LeMay is somebody who I'm quite grateful to have been one of my teachers.
Vincent Borelli, who was my high school theater teacher, who I believe one of my mottos for the company that I work with and founded is honest reactions to imaginary situations. And I think he really taught me, the stakes were always high with Mr. Borelli. Always felt like life was on the edge. You walk into class, he's like, where's your books? And you're like, here. But he sort of taught me that to react honestly, and it's something that I think I try to teach to the people that I'm creating work on, that it doesn't matter what the situation is, just be honest, and that could be from, that could be the melodrama, or it could just be the it's time to get a sandwich. So I appreciate that, and has also passed away, and I think lives through that work continuously.
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's three folks coming to mind. There's Liz Diamond, who's always been interested in the narrative drift, right? As crazy as something might be, we tend to make stories as human beings. And so you might have a potato chip on stage, and that potato chip falls into the pit, and you're like, what is that? It's a story. A potato chip has fallen into the pit. And I think Robert Woodruff is somebody who would literally sit on the edge of his seat when he watches actors work. The commitment of the director in the actor's process is something that's always been really moving to me. But it's so funny that you mentioned high school teachers, because I feel like I came to theater late, and I still remember being in my little Catholic high school in Miami, Florida, and this teacher, Corky, who had managed to gather 12 students to sing songs from Oliver, had decided that she was going to show us what real acting was by doing a scene of Joan of Arc by herself on stage in the auditorium at 3 p.m. And this woman who always had one button unbuttoned, you know what I mean? And had crazy wig hair just went up on stage, and she screamed her heart out through the monologue for these 12 kids who were just is this what theater is, And but then I was addicted, because I was something happened up there. She did something for us, and we were impacted. And that, for me, is so magical. I never take for granted, the liveness of people in space. It could be 5 people, it could be 1,000 people. There's something magical about people listening together to another person's story.
And that's how Lileana starts rehearsal every day. This monologue.
Every day.
She starts with this monologue every day. She screams it to us.
Is somebody introduce the next song?
Oh yes, our next song comes late in the musical. A lot of shit has happened, and 2 moms are in a car, and they're out to rescue their daughters who are being chased through all white woods by their psycho boyfriends, and they've got to rescue them. And it's called Outrun the Story.
Put your hands together for Outrun the Story!
Outrun the Story.
Keep them going!
We gotta get going. The boys are gonna kill our daughters.
We got a restroom, step on it, honey. Don't know where I'm going, but I gotta get there.
I could wind up dead up but I really don't care.
Never mind the slaughter.
Not without my daughter. We can outrun the story of our lives. Whoa, outrun the story of our lives. Whoa,
If we fight, we make it.
when Judith Light will break it, then we'll outrun the story. Over hill and dales and through fire and blood.
To suburban moms out for vengeance and blood.
Though our only clue is a kernel.
Our GPS is maternal. We can
Outrun the story of our lives. Whoa, outrun the story of our lives. Whoa,
when we were in the thriller. We were in the thriller, so let's
outrun the story. We're running out of space, out of time, out of wind in our hair, out of hate, out of love, out of clean underwear, out of desperation or necessity. We're cutting corners to beat the story. Out of light, out of steam, out of gas in the tank, out of breath, out of choice, out of steps on the plank, out of bravery or stupidity. We round these curves with nerves of steel, magnolias. Whoa, whoa. We make one hell of a team, don't we, Mammy?
My name is Nell, you fucking all white whore. We can outrun the story of our lives.
Please forgive me.
Whoa,
Whoa,
outrun the story of our lives.
infidelity.
We can end this thriller.
If we kill the killer, so let's outrun the story. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, maybe I should do wait.
Can we turn the lights on right here?
Hi. I just want to take a moment to shout out these incredible actors. We had Lauren Marcus, Alyse Allen Lewis, Molly Hager, Latoya Edwards, Liz Lark Brown, Tarra Connor-Jones, Vincent Jamal Hooper, Eric William Morris, Jennifer Fouché, James Jackson Jr., Morgan Siobhan Green, and our incredible musicians, Anessa Marie on keys, and Josh Priest on drums.
So can you,
Bye,
thanks
y'all.
everybody. Talk about your musical influences in this show and then your musical influences and favorite shows growing up, because I know we talked about that before.
Yeah, so again, going back to Strange Loop. If you saw Strange Loop, there's a song on the show called Inner White Girl. And that song sort of, for me, speaks to like some three big influences, which were Tori Amos, Joni Mitchell, and Liz Phair. And so I sort of, a little bit, that's an analog a little bit to White Girl in Danger, in that sort of the assignment that I gave myself musically in White Girl in Danger was, because there's this question of like black characters sort of trying to take on white narratives, and whatever that means, I gave myself the assignment of like defining what is like white music, and like, and trying to, what does it mean? Like there's a lot of conversations about like white artists appropriating black music, and I was sort of like, well, what happens if you do it the other way around? And so I sort of like appropriated, as it were, a lot of the music that I secretly listened to as like a teenager. So it was like, you know, Do, 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 do. Like the Cranberries and Don't Make Me Over, I'm all I wanna be. Like Hole and all of these sort of like alternative rock white girl things. And so that's a big influence, in addition to a lot of the black music that is the foundation of my sort of compositional background, which is like the Clark Sisters and Earth, Wind & Fire and Motown and the Philadelphia sound and gospel, so much gospel music. And so it's a real mix of those kinds of things, sort of like whatever white girl, white boy music is and whatever supposedly black people music is. And sort of questioning what that even means and sort of cross-pollinating all those things together. So those, and then not to mention all of the musical theater, because if you see White Girl in Danger, there's Sondheim is a big sort of inspiration for me, and Bill Finn is a big inspiration. So I sort of borrow from all over the place in order to create the score for the show.
I love that.
And also like soap opera underscoring music. That's like the other like the sleeper agent in the show. It's like, I mean, I was constantly listening to those strings and e-piano that's always playing underneath, like, you know, Vivian burying Carly alive in 1993, I think it was, which was like a seminal moment in my childhood when Louise Sorrell was like literally on Carly's grave being like, she loves me not. While Carly is literally underground and she's like still alive. It was, I mean, there's nothing, like go on YouTube and look it up. I mean, there's nothing like it. It was like the gothic, like, shit of my dreams. I loved it.
So that music is underlying?
Yeah, so basically almost all of the scenes, there's like the songs in the show, but almost all of the scenes have like underscoring to them to sort of hold it together. And that was like, it's been like insane and so hard. I've never done anything like this in my compositional career, but it's so satisfying because so much of watching those shows for me as a kid was the music really sort of helping tell the story and to urge you along and to like enhance whatever the emotions were that they were trying to convey in the scenes.
Raja, is there a number in the show that's the most difficult for you to choreograph?
No.
Of course not, sorry.
This is a piece of cake. I wasn't expecting that question.
Sorry.
I will say one of the things that I love about Raja Feather Kelly, in some ways it's like we share I think a love of the impossible, and anybody saying this is impossible, we're like, is it though? You know?
You dive in more.
Yeah, in some ways, and what I've been complimenting Raja in rehearsal is like the element of montage, right? There is a filmic quality to Michael's writing that is, I think, exciting for both of us. And Raja Feather Kelly has a particular gift for creating multiple stories that exist with an incredible precision and synchronicity and unexpectedness at the most unexpected times.
Pleasure.
It is
so
a
much
pleasure.
Oh my
Falls,
God.
stories within stories, winks at moments in time that you don't expect them to arrive. Like the level of detail is, I think, part of the gift. So I wonder if I were going to rephrase your question, you know what I mean? Is which number gave you the most opportunity for using your gift of montage?
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you, collaborator. I'll also, Lileana and I have worked together since 2015, so we have a great shared language. I mean, I just want to say, I think that we all went into this feeling like it's so big, it's so absurd, that I think I had to, like, in some ways, and I appreciate this, like, not think that it was going to be difficult in order to actually do it. So I think that's why I was like, wait, what? But I don't know. I'll say this, actually. I think the opening number was actually the most challenging because I felt like, like no one knows what they're in for. So how do I set everything up? How do I set up for myself? Like, if I'm gonna jump genres later on in the show, I can't wait to do that, right? If we're introducing anything that could happen in the opening number, if I don't do that, rather. If I do that, I'm gonna volley everything, and then every scene and every number is spike, 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 spike. So I think that was a huge challenge. It was doing the opening number. So is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And tell me, where did your love of dance begin? Choreography.
Bob Fosse's Steamed Heat. That's where it began. And then it like took a left turn and fell down a long rainbow into TLC and whoever choreographed for them. And then it like reversed like into like just the behavior of Fiona Apple in front of a television screen on her criminal video. And I was like, wait, you could just dance like this? Hot. And then I decided to get some training and became really, really obsessed with Jerome Robbins, and then I started cracking that open, and I studied postmodern dance in college and became really fascinated by Maggie Moran and Jan Fabre and Wim van de Kabis and Pina Bausch, of course. And now I hate watch everything, and I love everything. So, yeah.
Lileana, sort of the same question for you. Where did directing come into your world?
Yeah, I felt like it came late. I just want to give a shout out to my parents in the back. Yeah! Taking me out to see shows. So, you know, varying from like the melodrama of La Traviata, which I saw like at 10 years old, and like there's so much red and drama, and everybody, she's been dying for the last 20 minutes and she's still dying. This is amazing. And then, you know, going to see music, you know, like going to see concerts, going to see, you know, I saw Miss Little Beyonce back in her day in Miami when she was still part of Destiny's Child. And I was like, we're all so excited. Look at us, we're dancing. I feel like anything that gives you life becomes inspiration, right? Like, so movies that were beautiful and strange, Pina Bausch, seeing her work was like, I don't know, formative in some ways. Seeing Romeo Castellucci's like plastic melting on a table while people walk around in big puppet heads, like anything that was like absurd and life-giving, I think became a source of inspiration for me for like what is live performance. It could be anything, and when all of those different elements come together, that's the most thrilling. Yep.
That's awesome. Knowing your love of this genre, does the show sort of have a larger place in your heart than, let's say, A Strange Loop or anything you've...
I guess the interesting thing is I've been thinking a lot about this because, you know, coming off of A Strange Loop, so I've been getting this like sort of comparison, is I'm a big Joni Mitchell fan, and on her live album, Miles for Isles, there's this one point where there's this banter where she's tuning up and all the people in the audience are like yelling out, Carrie! They're singing out all these requests, and she goes, you know, one thing that struck me as different about the performing arts and the visual arts is, you know, somebody makes a painting, they make a painting, and they goes in a lot somewhere, and somebody buys it, or maybe nobody buys it until he dies, but you know, nobody ever said to Van Gogh, paint a starry night again, man. He just painted it, and that was it. And I think a lot about that because a little bit of my anxiety is that there's all these people who are like, make A Strange Loop again, man. And I'm not doing that, and yet in the same time, I do think that I think of A Strange Loop and White Girl in Danger as a little bit as companion pieces because there's an evolution of thought in both pieces, and both those evolutions of thought sort of crossed each other in the night while I was working on them. And so, you know, all I can do with White Girl in Danger is just sort of put it out there and put my heart into it as best I can and collaborate with my collaborators to sort of tell this story of sort of epic scope to the best of my ability. And I just want everybody to have like a good time, and also part of my mission statement as an artist in general is to make things that are as challenging as they are entertaining. And I feel like with White Girl in Danger, White Girl in Danger says, hold my beer. And that's what I'm going for, so we'll see what y'all think.
I think we all can agree his heart is in the show, right? Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible. Thank you, all three of you. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Alan,
Thank
so
you,
much.
everybody.
Appreciate your moderation.